on the Twilight Zone, a rather probing study of ice, irony, and the ionosphere. A show titled The Long Morrow. It stars Robert Lansing and Mariette Hartley, and it tells the story of an incredible trip into space with the sole occupant of the craft living in suspended animation. This one is for space addicts and the romantically inclined. On the Twilight Zone, The Long Morrow.
The Long
I appreciate an honest man. And
well, that's Idle right out.
Yeah,
he's
see you
not
next week. No, I don't mind. You know, I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of a solo voyage or someone preparing for a solo voyage. There seems like there is some level of trying to think of the word, like anticipation for something here. You know, I'm intrigued.
I'm optimistic. Like, guess what? Like, he said, like, sci-fi fans, romantically inclined. I am both of these things. I am he.
Of course I know.
I don't know. It's suspended animation. Like, guess what? This here. Of course I know him. I don't know. Like, I feel like Rod is very much a romantic at heart. Like, we obviously Maria wasn't here for that, but we did a kind of a deep dive on what his kind of philosophy is and how much of a goddamn liar he is when it comes to I don't believe in social commentary. Comments on all manners of society. And he seems to be very much a humanist, which I appreciate immensely. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll give it a pre-rating. I will go with a 9. I'm especially as I know that Auto has bigged this up, and I trust Auto's taste.
I've huged this up. I've not shut the hell up about this episode.
He's big
for weeks.
Huged this up.
So, yeah.
Marie.
It has kind of that what movie was it? Passengers, I think, with like Chris Pratt.
Wow. Just
from hearing the solo like thing with one spinning animation, I was like, oh god. I was like, please don't. But I'm like, I was surprised last time. I'll probably be surprised this time. Because that's really my only I guess example for that kind of I guess plot point. So I'm gonna go in. I don't want to rate too high so early.
Be a Grinch, say 6.
Never mind, we never refer back to the pre-ratings at all, so it doesn't really matter. We just do it for fun.
That's fair. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll go higher. I'll start with a 9 this time. I'll be extra optimistic. I really enjoyed the other episode. I'll go in, head first in this one.
Before Otto goes, I'm gonna go. I don't know where to go. I like the concept. There is a little bit of a science fiction element here that I like the sound of. So I'm gonna go with a 7. I'm gonna go with a 7 just to put it there.
Oh, you got to kick him out. You can't have this.
No, that will probably be stronger than what he actually rates this episode.
We'll see. No, I'll go with the 7. I'm optimistic.
I've got to give some context here because, like I said, I haven't shut the hell up about this episode. To the point that it is referenced in the show Gilmore Girls. I watched a full episode of Gilmore Girls and read through the subreddit just to get more context for this episode. That's how far down the rabbit hole it's going. Okay, so for the average person, this is probably a good to great episode, I would say, especially for the romantics. But it does lack in a lot of ways. The stock music, it's stock music. The set design is very lacking. One scene is literally just a blanket in the background. There's even a line of dialogue where they mock how Spartan the set is. So it's a little bit self-aware. It lacks in plot points. There's a lot of story not told, which is sometimes to its credit. There's some just plot holes, mathematical errors, things that they should have caught in production.
Wait, I thought you said this was a good episode.
It is undeniably my favorite episode of media or art, bar none. Wow. I love this thing like nothing else. Like nothing else. So
guess what? There's nothing you can criticize like your favorite piece of media ever. Yeah. I know that exactly.
I've got pages and pages of notes, so we'd better get cracking while the sun's still up.
Because guess what? Things are not beautiful because they're perfect. Things are beautiful because they're beautiful.
Okay, let's go watch the episode.
This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Welcome everyone to the Holodeck, our exploration through things that are non-Trek, and we are still exploring the depths of the Twilight Zone.
You know what? I just realized why I'm always smiling at the beginning of these is because Idle takes a moment to compose himself. He's thinking about what he's going to say, and then he dives right in, and he's so cute and so earnest. It perks me up every time.
And it never lasts.
No, it doesn't. It's the most innocent you will get from it. No. This is going to have a good effect on me. We have gone through The Long Morrow, a very heavily recommended episode from One Young Automaton 2000 here.
Yeah,
Auto, please tell us this long story of unfortunate love in the starry skies of what was it? He said irony and ionosphere. Ionosphere and irony. Yeah, that. Tell us, why did you recommend this episode for our playlist?
So everyone knows that feeling, right? When they show a friend or a spouse a video that they really like, they want to see if they're going to laugh, if they're going to enjoy it. That's what the Twilight Zone series has been for me. I bring you guys stuff, and so far you've enjoyed it. But in the words of the immortal James C. Kirk, not this time. This one is just for me. I love this episode so much. 6 times I've seen it. 6 times I've been blubbering by the end of it. It is so... I've thought of it since the first time I watched this. I thought about it every day. Not most days, every single day. And I don't know what it is. I think I've said before, for Twilight Zone, it's easy for me to put myself into the characters' positions and try to feel what they feel. And, a lot of this great directorial work and casting and whatnot. This one makes me feel so many things. And I really love this episode.
Because last week we spoke about another romantic episode, which was the trade-ins, which obviously I got very much lambasted by my fellow co-hosts here that I wasn't.
Rightfully so.
That wasn't of the romantic bit, but I will actually say that I really enjoyed this one, and I think it's partly because of the twist at the end, which again I was waiting for it. It was a very good twist. The fact that, spoilers if you've not watched it. If you've not watched it and you're watching this review, what are you doing? But the fact that, she did preserve herself, but he didn't. They both had... It's almost a little bit Romeo and Juliet, isn't it? It's a little bit, poison me for poison me. It's that same kind of thing. Marie, welcome to the Holodeck again. Thank you for coming back. How did you find this episode?
I found that I kind of preferred the last episode a little more. I liked the story. I liked the commander narrating. I just found I connected more with the couple from the previous episode than this one. So a lot of the more like heart-wrenching parts didn't hit so much for me, unfortunately. I was kind of waiting for it to, and I'm just like, I just don't have that much of a connection as I was expecting or wanting to have. Like, I don't know. It was a good story. It just being like just those. They only showed a few like scenes really, and they just kind of moved around those like few like locations. So it was for it only being those few people, that few things. I enjoyed it. I just felt not as emotionally invested as I was expecting to be, unfortunately.
I think this is this is one of those episodes that would have probably worked better in the hour format, because the thing it gets criticized most heavily is they have this 3-hour date. By the end of it, she says she feels a sense of loss even though he's not gone. And they do say they get a month together before they blast off into space, or he does. But yeah, you have scenes with Bixler at the beginning, more than one. You have scenes at the end they have to work on. So with 22 minutes, you have very little chance to show them actually falling in love.
I will say, though, that the chemistry between the actors, obviously I know them in their Star Trek context, which is Gary Seven and Zarabeth, the lady and the interstellar traveling man, was uncanny. Like, as soon as she dropped those papers and he was just, flirt level, full 100%. So smarmy, and they had chemistry. You could tell straight away there, like, those are two quality actors that know what they're doing, and that kind of in my head have helped me alleviate the fact that they're going to rush a love story here, but I don't mind because they've kind of proven it already.
Yeah, I kind of like fall a bit more towards like Marie's camp here, where it's a case of these are two eminently very capable actors. Like, guess what? Like, we were talking about how much George Takei was wasted on Star Trek in one of our previous episodes, and I'm here thinking, man, Robert Lansing, you're really, really fucking good at this. And like, these are two very, very talented actors, and there's just enough there that I'm like, okay, yeah, I see what you go for, and then I'm like, there's little things that like I think are like the love language of the time doesn't quite connect for me. Like the stroking at the back of the hand, I'm like,
Dude, he would get slapped nowadays.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things where it's like I have to kind of remove myself from the modern emotional context and kind of put myself in like, you know, that 60s era. And I feel like if you did that nowadays, you would play it a little bit more. You would obviously give it more time. But you would also have it be a bit more sort of like maybe shy, almost like, you know, he'd also pick up the papers, and instead of going for the hand gesture, they both kind of pull back, but they're both obviously interested. Like, I feel like that's how you would do it nowadays, and I feel like that would resonate more with me as a modern viewer. But I can't say, you know, I can't hold that against the episode because it's made for a 1960s audience. It's not made for me. And I can't hold, like, guess what? They are both very, very attractive people who are very talented actors, and they are trying their best to sell it. It's just a case of like, this really did need like a 50, or even in a case of like, you could have the meet cute happen, but then you establish that was maybe years ago, because he's established to have a long career of like 11 years in the space program. Maybe have a, I feel like even just having a confirmation that in universe they've been together for years would kind of add to it. But then I feel maybe that would work against the theme of the episode. So it's one of those weird things where it's like, I feel like you have to judge it by the context of like when it came out.
I think if, as a viewer, if you're a hopeless, you kind of have to be a hopeless romantic to put yourself in that. Yeah, I could see
Love at
someone
first
waiting
sight.
40
Yeah.
years to be able to buy into that. You have to be able to buy into love at first sight.
Yeah.
And so the dude, if the dude has a month left on Earth, he's not gonna like, oh, I'll call you next week and see if we can get together. No, you got to make hay while the sun is shining. But before we get too far away, I want to talk about the casting here, and I'm gonna call on my female friend and my gay friend to talk about the man. But first I'll talk about the woman, Mariette Hartley. I've done a lot of research on her this week. She had such a really fucked up, tragic childhood and early adulthood, and I started writing this stuff down, and I'm like, this is getting way too depressing. So I'm going to give you the bullet points, and trust me, it gets darker than this if you want to research it. 2 years before this episode, her father committed suicide with her in the house. She and her mother had to clean the room. Her mother later tried to attempt to take her own life in the same room. Her cousin and her uncle both committed suicide. She herself was diagnosed bipolar and had suicidal episodes as an adult. She went on to become the founder of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So she really has grown a lot in that aspect. Still alive, by the way. Her first husband, they were married 4 years before this episode, was physically abusive. She recalls rehearsing by day and being beaten by night. Quote, I don't remember the first beating, I just remember they got pretty rugged. And actually, during that period, the movie she was rehearsing for was her first film credit, Ride the High Country, which I watched this week. And throughout that, she's repeatedly smacked around by the guys, and they try to force themselves on her. So she's acting this out at work and then goes home to it. And I say that to say this, despite all of that, she exudes this tremendous warmth and empathy when she's on screen, and they give her a lot of soft lens. And, you know, obviously she's stunning, but if you cast another woman from that era who's stunning, stars, you'll like this. If you cast a Julie Newmar in that role, the episode doesn't work, because you need that empathy and that warmth and that compassion. Considering how messed up her childhood was, I think it's a huge point in her favor that she's able to bring that all to life on screen. She's acting out all the things she'd never had as a child, and that's a huge reason why the episode clicks for me. Is her casting is so good. And you said a little bit about Robert Lansing, but what did you guys think about him in that role? Because if I'm putting myself in his position, would I wait 40 years for her? I could see that maybe, actually, despite how crazy a concept that is. What did you guys think about Robert Lansing?
Marie, you go first.
Well, I haven't seen any of his other like stuff before, so I don't know him as Gary or in anything else. he very much had the presence of a commander to me. Like he played the role well. He had that character like locked. I liked him. He was kind of charming. He seemed very like just to the point professional until he bumps into her, and then it's like, okay, here's the charming kind of witty bit, and I liked that part until the hand holding bit. That was a little weird for me. That part I was just like, oh, that would have scared me off personally. That would have kind of like that would have been a little too like maybe too intimate too soon to me.
Too forward, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just like, but I'm also like a shyer like person, so that probably would have scared me a little. But I liked. I did see the chemistry with them, and it was very like as you mentioned, like kind of the soft like lens and stuff. I quite liked that. I thought it was very charming, honestly. I quite liked him in this.
Yeah, for me, it's a case of like, yeah, like, I think he was probably underused in his Star Trek appearances. Like that's what kind of what I'm coming with. It's like these Twilight Zones kind of demand from a lot more from your emotionality, and just like you have to really draw on him.
Shatner
And
isn't here right now to absorb all the ego and the lines, so
yes.
they get a chance to shine.
And I feel like there's something that we kind of have to touch on, which is like the marked contrast between him when he's out and about, you know, like flirting, being the professional, the button down man of the astronaut who can take anything and dish it back out, and then his narration, which is just like it's anesthetized, it's ponderous, it's slow, and like the instant they kind of revealed, oh, by the way, he's in suspended animation, but he's still aware. I'm like, oh, that would fuck me up. Yeah, guess what? Like, guess what? That's how you fucking mental brain death right there. Just like, no, I couldn't do that. That's my definition of horror right there. Like, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but one of my absolute horrors and like my greatest fear ever is the idea of just like your dementia and of just like outside. That fucking frightens the shit out of me. So the idea of being stuck in a fucking ice cube, aware for all that time, like he removes himself from the ice cube so that he can be with Sandy at the end. But like I feel like I would have like removed myself because I couldn't stand being in the cube like aware for that time. But that being said, like I feel like he does a really good job of projecting warmth and charm. That just enough bits of emotional vulnerability that like I look at these two and it's like, guess what? I've got X-Men on the brain right now because I always do. I almost see like Jean Grey and Scott Summers a little bit of like like that open empathetic warmth, and then like a little bit of I'm very very professional. I'm very much about my job. I'm career. You mentioned I've been 11 years and I've not had any time for romantic incursions, and then one person just kind of throws that all out of whack and. He's obviously committed now. It's, like he's by 5 months into the 6 month thing of the ship is being built. You have to be there for it, and then it's like there's this woman who makes him think about what if I just stopped and said no. Would I? And it's like he's very good at projecting that kind of like that warmth and emotion and that tenderness. But I feel like I actually all of that doesn't matter for shit almost. Because where this, and what I have to give him the biggest props is we've talked before about the absolute fucking failure that is young man acts as old man, right? But he in those last few minutes is probably one of the best actors at doing young man and old man thing I've ever seen, because he doesn't overplay it. He gets it just right. I believe that it's exactly the right character. Just old and
I had to look again because I thought, hang on, I had to think, like, did they actually get a different actor on? Because I was like, he looks like he's got a lot less weight on his jawline. Obviously, he slicked his hair back. And I was just like, that's really good overdubbing. But then, after looking for a bit more, you realise actually no, they've taken a bit of time on it. But yeah,
good makeup.
It was.
It's very subtle, but it's very well done.
It's better than them sort of like caking on prosthetics and like having wrinkles.
Mark Jameson, yeah.
I actually thought the makeup was a little bit too much, a little bit distracting, because like you said, dude, he nails it. And there are some actors who, when they do old, they do like crotchety old, and they have too much energy, and you can tell it's a young man behind it. He seemed like a dude that just stepped out of the spaceship and stretching his legs for the first time, and he just had no energy left, and it was really good. And the makeup, was it was fine for the era. I've seen much worse, but maybe because his acting was so superb that distracted me a little bit. I want to circle back around to something, and Idle, you may enjoy the secret horror aspect of this that's hidden here. So there's two possibilities for Douglas Stansfield when he's 6 months after he blasts off. Either he has the ability to return himself to stasis after taking himself out, in which case he has to fight every hour of every day against the urge. Why am I wasting 40 years of my life? Maybe she's moved on. Maybe she's dead. Maybe she didn't love me that much. He's taking a chance. And if you have that opportunity to put yourself back into stasis, you have to be vigilant every hour of those 40 years. Or option B is he can't return himself to stasis, and it was a one-way thing, in which case he's got to live with that decision for 40 years. And all the same questions: will she be there? Will she love me? Did I just fuck up 40 years of my life on a wish? That is like, it's a secret horror story, because if you think about how long he's got to spend in isolation, would he go mad? I might, thinking about, did I make the right decision? Am I making the right
torture?
decision?
Like, that it is banned to keep people alone for that long. Solitary isolation is like one of the most extreme forms of torture. Well, not of imprisonment, because after a certain time you just go nuts, and it is bad to be out of social contact for that long for the human brain.
Yeah, and it's really funny. You mentioned Passengers, and it's like that film got rightly drubbed for having way more fucked up like relationship dynamics, and it's kind of stunning to me that something from 1964, where me and Maria are like, the hand touch is a bit much, and yet it still understands the fucked upness of taking someone out of that and robbing them of a life. Way better than a movie from whatever it was, 2013 or whatever. Like, a way better understanding of what that does to a person and the emotional reality and just how that affects the love story. And I'm like, fucking, Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence is guess what? That's a way worse version of this story. Like, fuck, man. Like Robert Lansing and fucking Marriott Bradley, I think you said her name was
Marriott Hartley.
Marriott Hartley, yeah. Man, that was fucking tragic. And I want to go right back to Lansing as well, actually, because you mentioned the makeup was a bit too extreme. It was, especially in the hair. It was. They didn't go for the full white, but what I appreciated so much, and you mentioned he nails it right at the gate, is because his stride when he's walking through the hallway, because it takes a lot of confidence for your first shot of someone who's in this context. You know what's going to happen, and it's you have such confidence in his ability to physically project that age that's the first thing you see. Not the face. They don't want it to be horrific. They want a slow dawning of what it is. It's that's a lot of confidence to have in your lead actor.
I thought they did go for a little bit of shock value, because we see her face, and he jokes about her being stricken. She is stricken there. Her mouth is agape. Her eyes are big. And they don't do a reveal of him so much as they cut to him, and he's standing there, a close up, and we see all the age makeup at once, and it is meant to be a little bit jarring. So I mean, you see him walk, but it's all backlit and everything, and then when they do that,
it's the fact that he's doing an old man's walk. He's not doing the exaggerated stagger of. He's just that is a man who has to take slow steps. It's I feel like that was a way better way of ramping up the tension and the tragedy and building toward it, so it didn't feel like a shock to me. It was almost just an inevitability to me.
I really liked the twist. I lamented last time that there wasn't enough of a twist in the trade-ins. I loved the twist in this, because I was waiting for something in this, and he'd been. There were two twists. The fact that she'd cryogenically frozen herself, which is a bit oh yeah, of course, why wouldn't you? That makes sense. You think he's going to come back, and you can surprise him going, I'm here, we're in love, that's going to be great. But it wasn't quite so a straightforward happy ending, because it turns out he's been waiting the whole time, and that's the other twist that kind of adds that tinge of tragedy, which is so delicious. And I really like that. I fed on that, and there's a little bit of despair in her, because she realizes, oh no, I've made the mistake. And I feel like as well, he's very quick to kind of go okay, yeah, no, you go, this isn't going to work. And that was quite nice. Like, that kind of appeals to me as his character is just like, even after all, it just shows how much of a committed person he is, that even after all these years of solitary confinement, all these years waiting for her, even though he knew he wasn't going to be with her because she'd be old, she's actually young, and he can kind of go, well, I've already prepared myself to let her go when I come back, so there we go. That's nice.
Yeah,
Nice
some
parallel.
people have said it's an abrupt ending, but dude, he spent 40 years thinking about her. I'm pretty sure he's run through every possible scenario in his mind. And so by the time he get, longer than any of us have been alive is how long he spent in animation. So he's thought about every possible thing she might say or might do. And as soon as he saw her young, he knew this isn't going to work. So
He might even have thought that might be an impossibility. Like you say, if he had 40 years, he might have thought, "What if she's frozen?" Us? Like, because it doesn't seem to come as a surprise to him. Like he sees her, he's like, "Oh, man."
I quite like
rough
Dr.
deal,
Bixler,
raw
but
deal.
Dr. Bixler, who a doctor in charge of the whole space program as well. Like he was quite like his actor was quite good. He was like
Very
for a bit
forthright.
role.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. You're gonna go to this Star Stable. It kind of gave almost gave me Police Squad Naked Gun vibes of like the Q analog in the labs. Like, we're gonna go here and you're gonna go do this and you're gonna be in charge of this mission, and there you are. I enjoyed his character. That was good.
I like he's like, by the way, we don't have any chairs. I was just turning a phrase. You can't sit in my office.
Yes, make yourself at home.
Don't
By
believe in
home,
chairs.
I mean just stand there and look at these charts. Go on.
I want to
Otto,
talk
you've
a little
got plenty
bit.
of notes. Get them out of the way.
I've
Go
got,
on.
bro, I've got years of points here. All right. I want to talk about two things that are kind of linked. A, the sci-fi treatment of the story. And B, stories who emphasize love in a very, we've used this phrase before, a distillate fashion. Like they boil it down to nothing else matters but this, which I'm a sucker for that sentimentalist stuff. So two quotes, two lines come to mind. One from The Lonely, which is the first Twilight Zone episode we reviewed. And as Corey falls in love with this robot of a woman, he says, I shall accept her here simply as a part of my life, an integral part, because I'm not lonely any longer. Each day can now be lived with. I love Alicia, nothing else matters. And when you think about him on the spaceship for 40 years, each day can be lived with. What else but love, for all the sappy sentimentalists, could anchor your mind for 40 years and keep you sane? Just the thought of seeing her again. So I thought of that, and I thought of in the TOS Star Trek Original Series episode Metamorphosis. There's a non-corporeal being that's fallen in love with a human, Zephyr Cochrane, and Kirk asks the being, companion, do you love the man? I do not understand, she says. Is he important to you? Is he more important than anything? Is he as though he were part of you? And she says, he is part of me. The man must continue. I love these ride or die relationships, where nothing else matters except the man and the woman, or the man and the man in Star's case, and nothing else infringes on their relationship. And so we've talked in the past about how the sci-fi treatment is used to give you that degree of separation. Like, oh, I can believe in this story because it's not happening here on Earth. It's there's an allegory there. But in this case, they use it to ramp up the stakes. This episode is based on an O. Henry short story called Gift of the Magi. And in that story, it's about a desperately poor couple named Della and Jim. And Christmas is coming up. Della has less than $2 to her name. She wants to buy a present for her husband. Now, Jim's most valued possession is an heirloom pocket watch. So Della buys him a gold chain, a watch fob, and to afford it, she cuts off her hair and sells it. Now, her most valued possession was her long, beautiful hair. So when Jim comes home and they exchange gifts, turns out Jim bought Della a beautiful set of combs for her long hair, and to afford it, he sold the heirloom pocket watch that she bought the chain for. So they both exchange the thing that they love to try to make the other one happy. And it's a near-miss story. And so this sci-fi treatment takes the stakes from haircuts and heirlooms to 40 years in isolation. They just go, as big a stakes as they can with this. And I really appreciate the balls on that because, people say, oh, well, the stakes are kind of absurd. No one would give up 40 years of their life. But they're saying no, love really is that powerful. And it's the one topic, it's the most commentaried thing on in the history of art and literature. So I think it's fine for this particular topic to take the stakes up to infinity. And I really like the sci-fi treatment here of that short story.
I also adore that just from a perspective of like he read that and was like, okay, I'm gonna change it so the story is borderline irreversible except for the theme. Which is like, guess what? That shows how much it resonated. Like that's not the same story at all, except it is. Which is a strength of a good writer, I feel, where like you can like we talk about this in Star Trek a lot, how like every episode is just this episode but done differently or with a different aspect done. Like you see the same tropes, the same kind of themes repeated. But if you transform them enough, they become a different story entirely because of how differently and what kind of emphasis put on it. And it's like the fact that he did that with something so low stakes and blew it up like that. Yeah, no, I have to appreciate the craft that goes into something like that.
The question is a little bit of a light-hearted question for you all. What would you give up 40 years of your life for? What would you love so much that you would wait 40 years for?
Well, love.
Back?
Yeah,
love. That's
I'd do
about
that for
it.
Brody. I'd do that for Brody. In a heartbeat.
Marie?
I haven't really come to a point in my life where I would have an answer for that, honestly.
Which is fair because it's a huge sacrifice.
Yeah, and I'm like, I really don't like aside from like friendships, I mean, yeah, I suppose for that would probably be my answer. Like it's such a loaded question that I'm kind of stalled.
I was kind of trying to get light-hearted. You'd be like, no, I'd be cool. I get to watch like 40 years worth of TV shows and like that at a time. That'd be great. You guys are being far too somber.
Comes up like a question. Is it?
Yeah.
They put a microwave and Jiffy Pop, unlimited supply Jiffy Pop on the Starship, and he's just kicked back watching episodes of All in the Family or whatever. I don't know.
He's watching reruns of the first season of TOS and only the first season of TOS.
Yeah.
Lord.
What about you, Idol?
What would I
And
give
you
up?
better say your wife, young man.
Of course I would. I wouldn't. Why would I ever? No, it's actually I don't think I'd take that trip. Like I think one of my biggest fears, and we spoke a little bit about this last year, is I would hate to suddenly like have a lapse of memory, and now it's like 40 years in the future, and I've missed like most of my kids' lives, most of my life with my wife, most of the achievements and things that have happened to humanity. I just wake up and suddenly I'm old and I'm near dead. Like that is a horrible thing, and you hear that sometimes with people with dementia, just waking up and just kind of going like, life's gone now. And that's kind of this. That's why this story resonates with me a little bit, because he has served his country, he served the mission which he was keen to do. He knew the risks going in, but he knew what he was giving up as well. He's very resolute at the end to sort of say like, yeah, this is the fate I've chosen. But to me, that's a nightmare. That is a life wasted a little bit.
Yeah,
but that's
and a good life at that.
Exactly.
Well, that's why they anchor it. They anchor it
Exactly.
early on with that Bixby conversation where he says, you're young, you have no attachments. That's why you're chosen for the mission. And he smiles and says, I think I'll like this very much. And if he hadn't committed to that, you'd feel even worse for him for leaving things behind.
You're young and frankly, you're kind of useless. Go do this. All right, let's move on to. Go on.
No, not yet.
No? Okay.
One more thing. Yeah, I'm trying to be quick.
fine.
I'm tearing up pages of notes. One more thing I just noticed on the last rewatch. His Douglas's opening narration when he's in cryo, which stars. Yeah, you talked about it being sort of listless, and it's because it's a half awakened consciousness, and I think they do a good job portraying that. But he's speaking to Sandy, and he says, "Through the vastness of a naked desert of star and skies, I love you, Sandy." He says it twice. But chronologically, Sandra says it first to him, right before he blasts off. She says, I couldn't let you leave, Doug, not without saying goodbye, not without telling you I loved you very much. And he doesn't say it back to her. And I feel like that scene, him speaking, in flashback, is his sort of regret. He's regretful that he didn't say it to her before he left. And so he's kind of repeating it in his head throughout the years, just wishing that he would have said that to her while he had the chance.
Yeah, it was quite a cool opening. Like we kind of got feeling of What was the other episode where he wakes up in a spaceship? It was the To Serve Man. That episode kind of gave me a bit of a flashback to that episode, but I liked the kind of the slow plodding pace. We weren't quite sure what to expect. Like, we thought, oh, hey, this is going to be a sci-fi story. It's kind of not. It kind of is, but that's not the central theme. So I kind of enjoyed that first plodding open. How about we go on to a little bit of my favourite snack?
Bread.
What are you spreading on your bread this week? Marie, please.
It almost feels somewhat like the easy answer, maybe. But I really liked the part when he first shows, hey, he landed 6 hours ago. They both turn to go and look. The door's open, and it's just his silhouette. And I was like, okay, that looks pretty epic. I actually really like that, even though I know what's coming. I'm pretty sure I know what's coming, and I'm already kind of, oh god, just show me already. And just his walk to them both, and I'm like, oh, there it is. There it is. And it just seemed like such an epic bit for me. It's just, again, a very short part, but just seemed very epic.
I feel like I've seen that spoofed somewhere before, where the doors open, then they just walk past, and it's just actually an intern saying, "Sorry, no, he's now coming. I'll just go." Auto, go for your bread. Let's and don't just say the whole episode. You're not allowed to do that.
No, I have a clear bread for this one. All right, but I have to preface it because notes. All right, so I told you about that story, Gift of the Magi, and I want to read you a quote from that. It's right after Della returns home. She'd cut off her hair. She's waiting for Jim to come home so she can give him his gift. If Jim doesn't kill me, she said to herself, before he takes a second look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? What could I do with $1.87? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his step on the stair, away down on the first flight, and she turned white for a moment. She had a habit for saying little silent prayers about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please, God, make him think I'm still pretty." My bread of the episode has gone. It was actually my least favorite scene the first time I watched it. Sandra shows up on this NASA base, like an official base. They're right next to rockets blasting off, and she shows up in this sparkling gold lame dress, and she sticks out like a sore thumb. And I thought, you know what, this is a little cheesy. It's a little distracting. They're trying to present this beautiful 60s woman. We get the soft lens and everything. But the more I thought about it, this is the personification of that line. She had a habit for saying little silent prayers about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please, God, make him think I'm still pretty." And there's something to infer here, because Doug's narration at the top of the episode, he says that the mind does work. The mind functions. I remember the way it began. His brain works, which implies that Sandra, despite not being shown explicitly, she lived those 40 years in parallel with him. She had the exact same thoughts as he did. She had to wait just like he did. And there's no guarantee that he would return, that he would remember her, that he would love her. And a million times during those 40 years, she probably prayed, "Please, God, make him think I'm still pretty." So when she comes out there to greet him, and you can see in her acting, she's very chipper, and she's full of, she can't wait to see him. And there's a lifetime of anticipation there. And the scene is the most adorable and hopeful thing. And it's this beautiful expression of completely devoid of cynicism that I just really, I think about this episode or the scene very fondly now. She can't wait to see him again. And it's just, it touches me. Bread.
I'm gonna steal the spotlight. My bread was, I think it's the introduction between them. Their first little flirty chat that they had definitely was pure charisma. And he had the balls to go and say just I'll pick you up tonight. We won't do anything now. We just he was straight in there and he read the room. He knew what he was doing. He wasn't just being I'm a cocky, I'm just a cocky person. I'm just gonna say, hey, come on, love, let's go back to my place. I don't know why I'm northern. Anyway, sorry. No, he played it right. It felt good. It felt good to watch. You were anchoring for this this romance at the start, and like, you know, even though you knew it was a little bit of a tragedy, that, you know, well, tragedy in a different way. You knew he was going off to space for 40 years. You didn't know the other twist, but it felt not natural. It didn't feel natural at all, but it felt good to watch. It felt like the kind of interactions we wished we'd all had with our significant others in the first place, which turned out to be not quite like that at all. But hey, it worked. How about you, Stars?
It feels like when you think back in your head to the first time you met your significant other and you edit it to be real smooth. That's what it felt like. Like,
no, I remember
you weren't that
time.
smooth, but you think that you were. Yeah.
I remember the funny thing is I don't do that mostly because I don't remember the first time I met Brody, mostly because it was through like, you know, the forum that me and Marie met through. But I do remember like the weirdness of the circumstance, and it's probably not too dissimilar to dropping a load of papers in a NASA corridor.
Can I tell you how me and my wife first met? We met. I was doing photography for a battle of the band. She was dressed as a fairy, tapped me on the head, and just said, "Can I be with you?" And then fell over because she was drunk. So it's the equivalent of dropping the papers.
Yeah, the stork dropped her right in your lap, didn't
Absolutely. Anyway, sorry, go on, Stars.
I have two perfectly formed, like lovely, freshly baked logos of bread.
Are they well
which is not a
seeded?
snack. Bread is never a snack. Bread is a staple. I have two loaves of bread. The first one, they're actually both visual, and they are kind of it's what I'm talking about in relation to the trade-ins. The first one is that shot of him in the ice, as it were, and then you get the slow zoom in on him, and then like the overlay of Sandy's face over it while he's doing his narration, which was like quite a strong visual image of just literally that she is on his mind. It's the only thing on his mind. You almost can't see him because of how much he's thinking about her. And then the second would be the way that it comes back later with her, you know, absolutely stunned and horrified, and then his like stolid resignation, his acceptance, his just, this is the way things have played out, and I can't do anything about it. Just like the mirroring of those, and how they are both the exact same shot and yet not the same shot at all. I just appreciate that. Like that's gonna stick with me for a while. Like that's my bread.
I want to quote Robert Lansing to bounce off that. The actor who played Doug, he said, the best thing about that was Rod Serling. He was a man I was very fond of and whom I worked with before. Rod asked me to do it, and I said, yep. Those were 3 or 4 day jobs then, and it was a half-hour show. After I got the job, the director had this wonderful idea. I would be practically bare-assed in a block of ice. It wasn't ice, it was some kind of plastic thing, but I was a little shy in those days. It was uncomfortable for me. Mariette was very beautiful and very sweet, very nice to work with, a very personal woman. I was a little reluctant to do the semi-nude thing in the ice block, but it was such a good idea, so visual, that I bypassed my own feelings and did it. I was wearing a pair of mini trunks, which today I'd wear on a beach.
That interview was given.
Got to have a certain amount of like confidence to do that, you know. It's
yeah,
just, like,
you're right.
Good on him.
There's something I've been noticing a lot in the Twilight Zone. There is a lot of bare flesh. There is a lot of men in short shorts and, you know, women in, you know, it's there's a lot going on. How
is that why Stars is rating these higher than you are?
Very probably. You might be on something there. Okay, let's go on to.
Well, if that's the best they can do, this should last about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. We will retrace our steps and figure out what's going on.
You've got 5 minutes. Do it.
You have got 5
That's
minutes.
That's much too low rating. I'm sorry, Ron.
A member of our crew. Yes, last 5 minutes. How would you change the last 5 minutes of this episode? Marie, as our guest this week, please, what would you change? How would you alter the script to suit yourself?
Probably also defeating the purpose of the episode quite a bit. It's more wanting to just explore another avenue. Because they mentioned that they had another team. They're like, oh yeah, the system he went to go and find that took him 40 years to go there and come back. We found it in 20. We could have saved him the trip and stuff like that. And I'm like, why maybe one of those teams found his vessel and towed it in or something like that, found him halfway or something like that. And I was kind of like, okay, what if they managed to find him, brought him back like earlier, and then it's him waiting for her at the, like, seeing her frozen and like him also having to wait in that case, or him having to be like, okay, I did age a bit, but like, okay, let me freeze myself too, and they'll just be next to each other, like frozen until like her time's like up. I would guess it's on a timer or something. But like that's all I could think of was this, like, you had another team out there, you knew this mission was there, you didn't go look for him. Like, I don't know.
My assumption with that, it was that, like, when they say, oh, the March of Progress, was that they were, like, developed, like, space telescopes that could see that far and get all the readings that he would have gone. That being said, I like your idea, and you could just have it be that, like, you just change that line so that it is just a case of, yeah, they set the ship out, yeah.
I did forget about
It
that,
still be somewhat irony, but I'm like, so it kind of defeats some of the, like, a good chunk of the purpose of the episode, but I'm like, you could also still play it on that a bit and still have that. It would just be, oh, they're so much closer, and you just have that time still. But I don't know, that was just my initial thought. I'm like, wait, you had a team out there? What? I'm like, so it's, I don't know, I kind of stuck with that.
No, I do remember that, and I think it's there's like often comments today like, why don't we just launch a ship full of astronauts at near relativistic speeds towards Alpha Centauri now? So it's like, well, in about 50 years' time, we'll do it in half the time, so there's no point. We'll just do it then and get there at the same time. So yeah, I like that line. That was quite cool. My last 5 minutes would be that he goes on his mission. And I'm stripping almost all the romantic elements out of this. Sorry, Otto.
Yeah.
But I'm twisting it a little bit. And you know, he goes out there and he comes back, and on his way back, he's put into suspended animation. But there has been a problem, and the problem is that it lasted longer than anyone realised. And it's not been 40 years; it's been 400 years. And he comes back to what he thinks is Earth, but actually isn't Earth. He's picked up.
It's the Planet of the Apes.
It's almost, yeah, no, not quite, nearly, kind of like that. I did think about doing the Planet of the Apes thing. You blow it up. No, no, he's picked up by an alien race, but they're so alien that they present themselves in a form that he will recognise, and that form that he recognises is, of course, Sandy. Yeah, Sandy. No, Sandy was the last episode, wasn't it?
Yep, Sandy.
Sandy
Horn.
Yeah, sorry, we do this in blocks. So he presents himself as Sandy in a way to kind of communicate, but that breaks his heart a little bit. But he is a study of these aliens of humankind, and he is kind of trapped in that unique position of being there. And yes, I know it is kind of Truman Show-esque, and that is my hook, and that's what I will stick with.
I was actually going to say, no, that's not Truman Show at all. That's the end of artificial intelligence.
That is AI as well, yeah.
Which is I haven't seen it. La.
Spoilers for that 20-year-old Spielberg
man.
film.
Go watch that movie then.
Look, I'm still in the 60s moving forward, all right?
Oh, I see. Literally doing it chronologically. Did you start in 1911 with the journey to the moon?
Yeah.
Okay, Otto, give us your last 5 minutes, and don't say you wouldn't change a thing.
That ending is more romantic than you give yourself credit for. So,
thank you.
Stars, have you gone?
I have not.
Okay. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I'm throwing the darts at the wall. Whoever it lands on has to go.
I don't think you'll go for this, because it's pretty much the same ending. This ending devastates me. Like, I had to go to the powder room afterwards and have a good cry. It just eats me up. But I also hate this ending.
It was a bit awkward.
Yeah, I know. Well, whatever. I also hate this ending because I don't want Edward Binns, General Walters, telling me what's happening. I want to see it from the actors. I don't want to hear, no, she froze herself. I mean, it's fine because like it gives your gut drops a little bit if you're the viewer. I want them to say, okay, we called her in, and you see a form walking, and then it's the same young, beautiful woman, and she says, I want to hear it from her lips. I loved him so much. I missed him so much. I had to put myself in animation wait for him. And then he says, well, guess what? He's old, and here he comes. I didn't want to hear it from Edward Binns. I wanted her face, which that great stricken look, mouth open. I wanted that to signal to the audience something might be wrong. And then you cut to him, and he explains, I pulled myself out of stasis for you, Sandy. That's how I really wanted it. And I think they could have nailed that ending, and that being so expositional, I think kind of undercut it for me. As much as I love that ending.
Stars.
Guess what? I'm gonna be the sentimentalist again. And I'm gonna go ahead and say, you get the moment, you should go now, Sandy, and she walks away. And in this version of it, the general, whatever his name is, he gives him his moments of comfort, and then he walks off. But then you hear footsteps behind him, and then you hear papers fall, and he turns around and she's there, and she's like, well, it's not going to be the same, I'm 40 years older. This is, and it's like, what's time we have each other, something like that.
That's very rom-com-y.
A little bit, but
that's not a bad thing.
An understanding of the bittersweetness of we lost time together, but even if all we have is a year or whatever, we waited that long. Why not? Can we let's try at least. Maybe we'll fail. We could be heroes just for one day, type thing. Why not? Give it a shot, and then a little bit of that bittersweetness, a little bit of hope, a little bit of we fucked up, but we're both still alive. We both spent 40 years thinking about each other. Let's try. Because I love the resignation. I love the heroism of him throwing himself on the grenade and giving her the out. That's an amazing character piece. But my heart is soft and tender and fleshy.
Sure.
And I am a sentimentalist at heart, much like I imagine Ron Serling is. So give them a fucking chance.
It's time to get a cholesterol test.
I thought General Walter's diatribe there at the end was really gratuitous. He's like, "You're the greatest man I've ever seen."
Yeah, literally, he's met 5 minutes ago.
But then I changed my mind on that too, because if I'm putting myself in the characters' places, which by the way, it's awkward that those two have that thing while the general's standing right there. That was a little bit. But for him to watch that, you gave up 40 years and knew instantly it wouldn't work, and you gave her that out. I'm like, yeah, he is a fucking hero. Yeah, he is. So I really like that little speech by him at the end.
So what does he do after that? Does he just kind of go well, back home, I guess? Just off I go.
He's gonna write Briggs was here, and then if you know the rest of that scene, if you've watched Shawshank, so.
You know what? I'll give you another alternative last 5 minutes. So you have the same scene, and then the general reveals. So there have been advances in other technologies while you've been away. We can't make you younger, but what we could potentially, we fixed the older. Issue with people being no, not quite. Well, kind of. We've made it so that if you're in ice, you don't maybe make it so that in the 6 months in between him being frozen and her being frozen, they worked out the kinks, and they aren't aware while they're in the ice. So Sandy didn't have the 40 years like he did. Obviously, there's the quiet tragedy of the thing like that, but you have him go, what if we put him back in the ice? Sandy, you have the 40 years, and then in 40 years you can have, and if you still love each other, then Doug goes back into the ice. He goes for those 40 years. He isn't aware of it. She lives, and has another life maybe. And then you get the coda of him waking up. He's the age we saw him at. Now she's older. And then they just hold hands. And they say, well, a second chance. I don't know. It's a little bit complicated.
It puts her sacrifice at the forefront, because as it stands, you can infer that. That's what they imply, that she was awake, but she doesn't get any credit for that. She went through the same thing he did. There's no credit. If she goes, steps forward and says, I'll accept that burden because I love him, then she gets to be that. She gets to share in the heroism.
Yeah. So you go with, cool, I'll take the slow path. He takes the fast path, as it were. And then we meet in the middle, and then we get a second chance. We fucked up the first time around because communication didn't work. But we'll give it another try. I'll see you in 40 years. And then you can do a little thing of, see you tomorrow 8, and you do a little callback. I feel like that has a bit of mileage. If you wanted to take some of the sting out of it. Those are my last 5 minutes.
Awesome. In which case it is time
I can show you my rating code.
Schiller rating 3.5. Associational rating norm -3. That's much too low a rating.
That
Is
is
not
much too
accustomed
low
to
rating.
seeing an unsatisfactory
Been on
rating. on a member of
satisfactory
my
rating
crew.
and I'm a member of my crew.
Welcome. Okay, it is welcome. What the fuck? Okay, it's time to go over to our rating criteria. Marie, as our guest, I am giving you privileged task to say, do you want to give us a rating for us? If you have not, I do have a backup.
By all means.
Okay, in which case,
I couldn't think of one this time. I tried.
lady and gentlemen, how many short shorts wearing interstellar love-stricken travelers out of 10 would you give this episode? And we'll start, Marie, let's start with you as our prestige guest this week.
I kind of went a little back and forth because I was like, okay, I gave the last one a 9. I see a lot of similarities back and forth. This is kind of like the last episode, but reversed in a way. At least when it comes to like the plot point of the aging as a factor. So I was like, do I go? Like, do I stick with what I want? Like, I did prefer that last one. I was honestly kind of going, like, kind of yo-yoing. I ended up kind of just settling on 8.5 for it. I dropped down slightly just because I didn't have that connection as much as I wanted to. And I was kind of fighting for it, but I don't know, that part just didn't click for me, unfortunately. But I did enjoy the episode and the story for it.
Okay. Stars.
Now I have to try and remember your goddamn rating.
Would you like a reminder? It was how many shorts wearing interstellar love-stricken travelers out of 10?
Okay, I'm still gonna bumble that, but that's fine. I'm gonna have to go with. I'm going to go with an 8.5. Love-struck interstellar travelers wearing short shorts out of 10. This didn't emotionally resonate with me quite as much as the previous one. I think for the same thing that Marie mentioned. I think it's a work of art. I think that, like, especially, it's one of those things where if you don't experience something in its original context, you lose something of, like, that piquancy, and I feel like that's part of what's missing for me. Is like, if I had seen this in the 60s, if I were much older than I were, I think I would watch this again and be like, yeah, 10. But because I have a modern sensibility and I can't divorce myself from it entirely, I can't buy in completely. And I feel like that's a failing of me, not a failing of the episode. Because it's just a case of, and this needed to be like a 50-minute. This needed a bit more time to cook. Give me more of, like, those two just acting, because they are wonderful together. They have so much chemistry. Like, give them time to breathe. And it's like a case of, like, what's the worst thing? What's one of the nicest things you can say as a criticism of something? Oh, I wanted more of it. Like, how awful. Yeah. But I do love it. I think that this is, like, it's flawed, and it is imperfect, but it is exactly what it's set out to be. And I feel like maybe Otto's going to call me out as being a bit of a hypocrite on that, because, like, it delivered exactly what I wanted from this, but yeah.
No, I get you. Like, you really enjoyed it, but you can't give it a higher rating because of reasons you can't quite explain. Like, I totally get that.
It's also, it just doesn't emotionally resonate for me quite as much. It's a case of, like, here's the thing: Romeo and Juliet never quite landed for me. Even when I watch a version that I like Romeo plus Juliet by Baz Luhrmann, it's still a case of, I'm always much more of a Midsummer Night's Dream kind of guy, or it's like, or Much Ado About Nothing, even though that's
fellow nerd.
Or Much Ado About Nothing. I prefer, like, different stories like that, and that's the case of, like, this is an excellent execution of this version of the story. It just doesn't quite hit it for me, and I feel like that's a failing of me, not of the story. 8.5.
Otto.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm not gonna. We're not gonna end on Idol's non-romantic rating, by the way.
No. I'm being going to be very favourable. I've been bouncing about. Okay. I'm going to give this an 8.7. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Wow.
No, I did. I felt like, I am not into soppy rom-coms. I'm not into. I especially wasn't favourable of the last episode. I like this because of how the romance interacts with the plot, and it is key to the plot. it's key to the twist of the plot as well, which is, you know, a tragic romance, something that has gone very wrong, that is part of that Twilight Zone-esque twist that I'm now looking for in an episode, and that delivers it very well. I liked the sense of loneliness you get from him as he's narrating his past to the camera. I enjoyed the acting, the chemistry between the people, and, you know, the only reason I don't give it higher is probably the same as Stars. I want more. You know, I wanted this to be like The Printer's Devil. I wanted this to be the 40-minute episode, not the 20. It could have done with slightly better sets as well, like, you know, them saying like, "Oh, sit yourself down. You can't, but just pretend." It's not far off being excellent, and it is. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, it had the conceits of both being science fiction and Twilight Zone, with a little bit of, you know, what you consider contemporary 60s television at the time, in terms of emotional storytelling in it as well. So 8.7 from me. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Auto.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about, you know, how we grade things and what we look for in movies, and I do love the distillate stuff. Like, if I'm watching a romantic story, I don't need to see all these sets and like special effects and stuff. And people call out the plot hole. Well, what did he eat for 40 years? I'm like, if you added a scene of him eating a banana, does that enhance the story? No, it doesn't. So, you know, I get it, but it's not important to the story. All right, my rating. So Stars and I, a couple weeks back, watched the movie Dead Poets Society, and there's a scene near the top of that where they're grading poetry on the Pritchard scale.
Yes.
And they draw an axis on the chalkboard, and across the x-axis, how important is the objective, or is the subject matter of the poem? And on the y-axis, how artfully did they achieve the objective? And then you plot the area, and the total area, you know, square root, hypotenuse, whatever. That is mathematically how great this poem is. And, you know, they're laughing at the idea because it's a stupid idea. But Stars said, well, you know, that's why sometimes I give episodes, I rate them negative, because, you know, it's not about fitting it into the box. It's about how it makes me feel. And of course, I still hate Stars' guts for that. I loathe every time you break the scale. I'm like, no, it's got to be a 1 to 10. What are you doing? So in honor of his sentiment, I'm going to grade this episode on how it makes me feel, which is 21,009,600 short, wearing interstellar love-stricken travelers out of 10, which is a minute for every, a point for every minute that these star-crossed lovers had to spend apart.
What was that? 21 million, how many?
21,009,600. This episode just, yeah, I tell you, I think about it every day. Like, no matter what I'm doing, it just pops in my head.
I was about to be like, you can't do that. I'm like, nah, I'm signing off on it. He can do that.
one time only, I'm breaking it. I've never
one
done
time
before.
only. It's his fucking series. Like, he gets to do
Stars
that.
just went to like -5, or occasionally like we haven't even done 11. Like, I feel like this is okay. No, it's fine. I'll allow it just because the points don't matter.
It's his fucking series. He gets to do it.
That's very true. Okay. Well, at the end of that brings this score to an average of, hang on, I got to read this right, 52,502,406.4.
Did you do the maths on that right?
No,
I've got it in a spreadsheet.
million.
Yeah, no, I'm not that clever. Jesus Christ. So thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Marie, for joining us these last 2 episodes. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. How do we get you?
3 of my favorite people here.
Okay.
I was waiting for that backhanded compliment to come at the end of that. Like,
Reese is like, I've known better. Okay. Mr. Serling, please, what are we watching next week?
What would you do for $100? 1,000? 10,000? Next week on Twilight Zone, Franchot Tone and Liam Sullivan illustrate just how far man will go for the windfall of a lifetime. Thank you and good night.
And we'll see you next time.
Stay frozen.